Welcome back to the Unstuck movement. I'm Rob Z, your host, and this platform is to help you find those breakthroughs in life that are going to take you to your next level. Today, we have the incredible Devin Schubert with us on the podcast. Devin, I love to jump in right off the bat with a big question just to get the ball rolling and to find that breakthrough. So if you could sum up your journey in one word, what would that word be that defines your journey, and why is that the word?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I would say one word that defines my journey is the word influence, and what that means to my journey from beginning to end.
So when you talk about influence, and influence can be, you mean that in so many different directions. How have you positively used influence to change other people's lives through what you've gone through?
Yeah, I believe that each and every one of us carries something that other people want. And I believe that each and every one of us has something inside of us that we get to release to other people. And so for me, that word influence was an opportunity when I was in, I think it was sixth grade, in my youth room at church. I was the star of the show. I could burp, I could fart, I could distract everybody from people learning about Jesus. And man, I had the influence of the entire room. And it wasn't good. It wasn't good at all. But at the time, the girls were laughing. Everybody was drawn to me. And it was at that moment, Rob, when the youth pastor said, "You know what? We're just going to be done for tonight. Y'all can go downstairs and play basketball. Devin, stay up here for a second. I got to talk to you." And he grabbed a hold of the football and he said, "You have two choices. You can either lead people to God, or you can lead people away from God. You have an influence on people. Are you going to do it in a positive way or a negative way?" And he grabbed that football and he chucked it across the room and he put a hole in the wall. And he said, "The choice is yours, but you're not going to be allowed to distract people from the kingdom of heaven anymore in this room." And he walked out. That convicted me like none other. He wasn't some big guy. He was a short little guy. But those words were so impactful to me, to recognize that we all have influence in one way or another in our lives. And it just radiated from there. I had to make a choice on if I'm going to be a good leader or a bad leader.
Yeah, man, that's really good. That's what an impactful message that left an imprint. I'm sure that just like the football left an imprint in the wall, that left an imprint on you that you're talking about it today. So this is the Unstuck movement, right? This platform was created because I love to find breakthroughs and I love other people to tell their stories of breakthrough. That's why this is taglined as true testimonies of breakthrough. And it sounds like that moment gave you a bit of a breakthrough for you in your life. This podcast is brought to you by the Connected Leaders Academy. Check out connectedleadersacademy.com. So Devin Schubert, founder of Core Leadership Solutions, is an internationally acclaimed coach, speaker, and award-winning entrepreneur featured on 2 reality TV shows and a published author. He has personally guided over 1,500 coaches and captivated audience on 7-figure platforms with his wisdom and charisma. And we're going to dive more into that wisdom, charisma, and influence today. And as you were talking about that, man, it just made me think of the gift and the curse, right? Because the thing that we were gifted with by God can also be used as a curse in our life. And so many times this thing that we feel, I know this was true throughout my life. I was always very sensitive, right? And I always saw that as kind of a curse, that it would I would feel too much. I would think too much, and it would drive me nuts. And it held me back from a lot of things. And then the older that I got and the more I leaned into how God had created me, he created me that way. I was not created that way for to destroy my own life or to hold me back or to have me overanalyze things. It was a gift, and I was able to connect with people on a different level because I had that sensitivity. So hearing about you and what you're saying about your influence is like this thing that got you a lot of laughs, got you a lot of attention. That influence was probably a lot of fun in that direction. I'm sure you still use it in that way, but you use it more for a positive impact than a negative impact. So that moment happens. How did you over time start to realize, okay, this is a really powerful ability, a powerful gift that God has given me, but I have to use it for good. What are the ways that you saw throughout your trajectory in life after that you started to use that for good?
Yeah, I was so blessed, Rob, that this youth pastor saw me, and he didn't give up on me when there was that negativity that I was projecting. And so for me, he spent time with me. We went through the book of Romans and went through a Bible study one on one, and he led me. He showed me what leadership looked like. He showed me what influence looked like and how Jesus emulated that in every area of his life. And so he immediately, after about a month, he said, "You know what? I want you to take over the middle school youth ministry. I want you to start to teach them." And so, what better way to empower somebody who's a born leader and has influence than to give them the opportunity to lead in the positive way. And that really began to sow a seed into me of what it looked like for discipleship. And that as leaders, there's always somebody behind us that's following us. There's always somebody. John Maxwell says it best, that if a leader is somebody that when you turn around, there's somebody there. And so we all have it, whether it be being a father or whether it being an employee. And so we take that a lot of times for granted. And sometimes we don't even recognize that there's always people watching us. And so he put me in that empowerment stage to where he's like, okay, if people are going to be following you, I'm going to give you a platform to be able to do it. Now, a lot of times I hung myself. I led myself out to dry. It was bad. And I continued to do that. I followed in his footsteps, going to Bible college to get this amazing youth ministry degree. And in reality, it was a piece of paper that I wanted to get. And I never ended up fully working for a church as a youth pastor. But it was all about that influence. And how could I influence these teens now? How could I see that one person that maybe was never able to be seen before? And so I started doing youth ministry. I helped plant 7 churches and 9 ministries over a 10-year period of time. And hung out at the skate parks and hung out downtown, hung out all the places where most Christians don't want to go. And then I brought these kids to church. And I'm just going to tell you, Rob, the elders of some of the churches did not like that there were kids out front of the church on the steps reading the Bible, smoking marijuana. I mean, I get it. I get the image.
Uh-huh.
But these kids were coming to know the Lord. These kids were dedicating their lives and recognized family. And I got to be able to do that. And I'll tell you, a few times it came to the hard decision that they requested of me of either choose the church or choose pouring into these kids.
Wow.
It wasn't a hard decision. It was, I don't even need to go pray about this. Goodbye. I am leading these teenagers in the ways of the Lord. And I still have contacts with some of those from 15, 16 years ago. And they're out doing ministry. They're out leading worship bands. It's amazing. And I just think back of what if I would have fallen into the normal church culture, biblical thinking of, we just got to think inside of a box and not stepped into the fullness of my calling with influence and leadership.
That's really, really true, man. And it's interesting in church culture in that way, it's always been kind of divided into 2 different mindsets, and to go out into the community and pull people in and minister to them where they're at. Like you're going to the skate parks where they're at and showing up and doing life with them. Mm-hmm. That's a game changer. Expecting them to show up at church one day, that's probably not going to happen. Or if it does, they're going to be like at the end of their rope. But if you go out, and then they're also going to feel probably kind of rejected, they don't fit in, and they're most likely not going to stick around. But if you go out and find them where they're at and build those relationships there, that's what's so impactful. I just had John Sanders on, and he has a platform called Entre Pastors. And basically it's encouraging pastors to go out into the marketplace and find ways to develop businesses outside of the church. So they're reaching the community. They're touching people outside of the four walls of the church. And it sounds like that's also something that you did. And I need to connect you also to Micah Marshall. I'm making this note right now because he has an incredible youth ministry in my area. He does exactly what you do. And one of the things you said a couple of minutes ago was, you said when that youth pastor saw you, right? When people see you, things change. And so many times in life, some people for their entire life, it seems like nobody ever sees them. Nobody ever recognizes the gift that they have. Or if they recognize it, they're either jealous of it, or they dismiss it, or it's seen as a problem and not as a gift. It's seen as a curse and not as a gift. So how do you encourage other people in our daily lives, practical ways we can show up and actually see somebody so we can help them come out of whatever they're stuck in?
Yeah, that's a great question. The number one thing that I believe everybody needs to go down the path of is slow down. If we would slow down and recognize all the things around us, all the people around us, do we recognize that if we take this thing and set it down for maybe a moment, we might recognize the person that's maybe next door that needs our help? And so many times we've trained ourselves to live in a fast world pace that we don't need to. The Lord calls us to rest. And I don't believe that that's just an opportunity to do it for one day. But one of the things that I'm working on during this season of my life, and this is going to sound totally counterproductive, but I'm really working, Rob, on being bored. Being bored. Why? Because, man, I can be so busy doing so many things. And then I wonder why I'm not as creative as the way I used to be, why I'm not connecting so well with people. And so if we really are able to slow down, we'll recognize those blessings in disguise all around us. Because if we get to bless somebody else, man, how much better does that make us feel that to reap that peace? So slowing down is a huge key that we all need to do. And even on social media, reaching out to people in the DMs, man, that's one of my favorite things to do. And I encourage my entire team to be able to do every single day, is to reach out to 5 people every day and just give a word of encouragement with asking for nothing in return. And I'm telling you that we have built some of the greatest relationships just by doing that. And there's no catch. We just want to bless people and see them and let them help them know what that looks like.
That's really good. And it's always the simple things. God is simple. So it's simple stuff that, especially when it comes to your pride, right? That's not something that's always easy to do, but it's very simple to do. And being bored, another thing, there's nothing more simple than being bored, right? But we have a really hard time being bored anymore. And the faster things speed up, man, I think about that myself all the time. I try to spend some deep work time with myself every week, just spending a couple hours away from stuff to get creative, right? We all have this inborn creativity. When somebody says they're not creative, it's like, well, if we're created in God's image, we're very creative, but we've had creativity like beaten out of us or like worked out of us, however you want to call that. That's really good, man. I love that. So spending more time being bored, spending more time, focusing on slowing down. And I talk about this a lot. I'm going to talk about it right now because it's important. It fits the story. But I had a dream a couple of years ago, and in the dream, basically the message was, stop worrying so much about where you're going and just start loving people, right? And when you're worrying about where you're going, you're never bored. You're constantly a flurry of activity. But when you're loving people, you slow down and you actually see people where they're at. And that's the gospel. And that's where we need to be at on a daily basis. But it's so easy to get so distracted so quickly. It's crazy how quickly you get distracted, man. So I really, really love that. That's really good. And you were also talking just a second ago. What do we do when we're given the opportunity to lead, right? Yeah. I'm a leadership coach, and so are you, right? So many times in life, there are opportunities for us. Every single day, there's opportunities for us to step up and be a leader because so many people don't want to lead. How do you encourage other people to step up into that leadership? How do you recognize it? And how do you have the the boldness and the courage to be like, no, I'm going to take control of this thing? How do you do that for yourself? How do you encourage others to do that?
Yeah, I think there's two ways you can go about this, and I'd like to take the opposite of effect first. What happens if you don't?
Somebody else is going to lead you.
And we're going to be held accountable for those people that we were called to lead and we didn't. Mm-hmm. To me, that's a heavy burden to know that I'm going to stand in front of God and he's going to say, well, why didn't you lead this person? I put him right in front of you. Oh, because of your flesh got in the way. You got scared. Oh, you didn't trust me enough. There's that weight that comes with that leadership to know that, okay, God, there's that fear of the Lord, of the blessing, and that he loves us so much that he trusts us. So, a big question is, what happens if I don't lead these people? And then to encourage people to be able to step out and do that, it's what are your gifts? When I train in leadership, especially Christian leadership, it's what are your gifts? What are your calling? What is your calling? And what's your anointing? When you think of those three things and you know those three things, you can lead people in the atmosphere that you're called to lead people in. And you're standing in the fullness of your identity. And so when you're called to lead, it's standing in the fullness of who you're called to be, because that is where you're in full alignment with God and who he's called you to be, to lead people in the direction that he is calling you to lead.
Man, I love that. That's so good. So real quick, we have to jump into the sponsor, 60 seconds to shout out the Connected Leaders Academy. When we come back though, man, I really want to touch on the title of this episode, Unstoppable Purpose, Balancing Business and Fatherhood. I want you to go into the story of what happened to you in your life with your adopted son and what happened to you through that situation and the major breakthrough that came from that. We'll talk about that in 60 seconds.
Hi, my name is Jose Escobar, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Connected Leaders Academy. We're a growing tribe, a community of entrepreneurs all over the world, globally, all across the country, high performers, titans of industry. If you're an entrepreneur and you're looking to grow personally and professionally, scale your influence, develop your skill sets, move the needle in your business, more clients, more money, more profit, the bottom line, and of course, grow your circle and your network like never before, this is where you want to be. Join the Connected Leaders Academy today. We are scaling massively. We want to welcome you in. Check me out on Instagram and on Facebook, the @ JAESCO25. We look forward to having you join us. Take care.
So, Devin, so excited to have you on here, and we're just barely scratching the surface of what I want to talk to you about. But when we talk about balancing business and fatherhood, unstoppable purpose in your life, talk about your journey personally for yourself and your family's life and what you've gone through.
Yeah, so up to this point, we've talked about what influence has meant in my life and then some of the things that I've learned. Lastly, I threw out about the devil's advocate. What happens if we don't lead? And there's times in my life that I don't know that I led the best way that I could have. I was married and we adopted 3 kids, and 2 of those boys were from foster care. And during our marriage, I had done all the ministry things. She was really amped into working and ended up having an affair. And she ended up leaving to stay with her boyfriend, I guess you'd say, at the time. And she's still with him today. And it devastated me, that false identity that I put upon myself, or that others as well tried to portray upon me, that you'll never be a leader again, especially in the church, because you have this divorced on you and your ex-wife now had an affair. And now you're taking care of kids as a single dad, what that looks like. And one of my sons has got some pretty severe mental health and trauma issues. And so to add on top of all of that, she ended up kicking him out of the house. And I took him on one-on-one. I had the other kids went to go live with her. And it was a daily grind to be able to find the help that he needed, that we needed, in order to address the issues that he was going through. I was working also as a social worker at the time, so I had very well connections around this area. And I'll tell you, like, none of the attorneys, none of the judges, none of the professionals, nobody knew what to do because of his wide variety of diagnoses and mental health challenges, physical aggression, and some other issues that were really destroying us. And it caused me to step away from ministry, caused me to step away from my 2 moving companies that I was helping as a part of at the time, and gave everything up. I ended up spending close to $100,000 over 5 years to try and get him and I help. And we ended up losing everything in the meantime. We lost my family. We lost my mom couldn't really be around us because of his physical aggression that could happen. My friends didn't want to be around us. Forget any type of relationship. Like, that was out the window. Just out of respect, out of, that person. I didn't want to put a person in that predicament. And so we talk about influence. I had to step away from all the influence that I had grown for so long. And what the word says, what the Bible says is, are you willing to leave the 99 to stay and find the one? And that was something that the Lord clearly, I can't say it was audibly, but it was as close to audible as he could have gotten at that moment. He said that your one and only assignment is your son. One and only assignment is your son. I'm like, man, I've done a lot of traveling, a lot of ministry. I could help a lot of people. But I took that solely and wholly to everything that I was going to do. I was going to give everything to my son.
How did it play out?
Yeah, so after 5 years of me and him going back and forth, every day there was basically restraint holds, 20, 30 minutes. Cops would be called, and they would come and they would restrain him. It would take 5 to 6 people to restrain him and hold him down. And it was rough. And we had 21 cameras in my house, on the inside, the outside, to just keep me safe, to keep him safe, to keep any allegations safe. And it was hard. I mean, can you imagine 5 years of not knowing if your son's going to sneak out, not knowing if he's going to come into your room, threatens to kill you every single time. And yet you have to somehow sleep. And so my body caught up to me, man. There's this trauma. Then there's this book called The Body Keeps Score. It's the best book on trauma inside your body that I've ever seen, ever read. Probably will be forever. But my brain and my nervous system stopped communicating. That trauma had interrupted that area. And when we went to the hospital one time to get him the help that he needed, I woke up in a hospital bed, shaking convulsively. And I was awake for between 5 to 15 minutes, and I would shake and I'd pass right back out. And we had done some brain SPECT scans a few years prior. And this international doctor, psychiatrist, had said, if you don't get help in the next 6 months, I don't know how you're going to make this. Your body cannot hold this anymore. And that was 3 years prior that they'd said 6 months or less.
Wow.
And now the diagnosis that they gave me was, there's nothing we can do. We can put you in a treatment facility where you can get 24-hour care. And I'm like, I've been fighting for 5 years for my son to be put in a treatment facility to get the help. And now you're going to try to put me in one? Heck no. I'm going home with my family and my friends. And so they gave me 3 months left to live because there was nothing they could do. And so I went to live with my friends. And Rob, I'm telling you, I remember there was times where I was standing at the top of the steps having a conversation, and the next thing I knew is they told me that they had carried me to my bed because I had collapsed. And that's how I lived for a couple of weeks. And it was tragic. My son was put into a shelter and started to get some help that he needed. And then I was done. Like, I didn't have anything else. My one and only assignment's my son. Now my son is gone. He's getting the help that he needs. What else do I need to be here on the earth for? And that's when Jesus showed up. Jesus showed up in my room. And all I remember is that it was this image that came into the room, and I could just feel this difference in the atmosphere. And he came to the side of my bed, and he said, Devin, I need you here. I need you to share this story, your story, to the world. I need you to bring awareness of what I can do in people's lives. And you can't do that if you're not here. So will you stay and do this? And I said, yes. And then there's that one word that you never want to hear upon good news. It's that word, but. It means everything else that I just said, what you thought is probably wrong.
But always means like something very difficult is coming.
Yes. And he said, but you're going to need to go through the process. Like, come on. One of these would have been great.
And you've already been going through the process. I mean, dear Lord.
Right. I mean, right? Come on. Give me a little grace or something. He said, Devin, you'll never be able to impact as many people if you're instantly miraculously healed as if you would if you go through the process of healing and then able to meet people where they're at. He said, you are going to leave a legacy, and your legacy starts right now. And so I did. I went on a 3-month journey with Jesus through a healing process. And it was about almost pretty much 4 months later that I went back and got some testing done and completely healed. And it was amazing.
Incredible, man. Incredible. God bless. Like, that's just, thank God. Thank you, Jesus. And, you know, also, I just love stories like this, because anybody who's going through something, when you're in the middle of the thing, it seems like it's never going to end. It's like, how could this possibly be any different? This has been years of my life. I can't imagine. So from the time you adopted your son until the time of healing, how many years was that?
Let's see. So I adopted him when he was 2, and this was when he was 13.
Wow.
Yeah.
So through that, it's like, this is life. This is who I am. Mm-hmm. This is me. This is how things are. This is forever. That's how it feels when you're going through something. It feels like, I mean, when you're going something through a month, it feels like forever. Yeah. If I have a kink in my neck for a week, I'm like, well, this is how it is now. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm gonna have to deal with this suffering. That's incredible. And it's incredible how God can heal us, and how he wants to, but he uses it as a message that we share with the world. And that's one of the things breakthrough comes with, is making your mess your message, right? Because you have to, if you give up or whatever it is in the middle of that mess, then the message can never come and you can never use it. There's no testimony.
Yeah.
So God wants us to use these things as testimonies. And the only way we can really, truly grow is to go through the things to get to the other side of them, so we can use them for his glory. That's amazing, man. And I just want to like sit on that for a minute and drive the point home that when you're going through something, and we're all going through something, but sometimes you're going through something that seems like it's never going to end. It will end, and you're going to come out on the other side. As long as you have faith, as long as you stay the path, you're going to come out on that thing the other side.
Yeah.
A different, better version of yourself.
Yeah. Rob, one of the things that I heard all the time is, you're just going through a Job season. You ever heard that? You're just going through a Job season. I said, God, I'm tired of hearing that. And this is what he told me. He said, Devin, which part of Job's story are you listening to? Like, okay. What's the outcome of Job's story? He got a double blessing at the end.
Right.
Double blessing. So you're going through a Job season. Which season are you claiming is yours? That transformed my mindset. That transformed my thought of, okay, it may look like it's trash and it's hard right now, but that double blessing, that's mine. That's mine, and I will not give up until I get it. Not just for me, but the inheritance of that for my kids. Like, wow.
Yeah.
How blessed. How blessed.
It's thousands of generations.
Right.
Of blessings.
Right. Yeah.
Thousands of generations. But when you're going through it, when it doesn't seem like it's ever going to end, how did you make it through it? What do you advise people to do as they're going through it and they're on the verge of giving up?
Yeah, man, you know, I used to tell people, always reach out for help, humble yourself. And I recognize, as I look back at my journey and I've helped people, there may be times where you don't have anybody to reach out to. And those are the hardest spots. And I believe that the biggest thing that the enemy wants to tell us is that we don't have anybody to reach out to. because we just don't reach out. We shut ourselves down. And so who is that person that you can reach out to, but also recognize, and this is one thing that the Lord showed me, is that, Devin, if you would have put the hardness, the difficulties that you were going through, if you would have given them to me first instead of going to your friends, you would have casted the heaviness of those burdens on me instead of losing those relationships on how hard your life was. And so always remember to first give those burdens, that heaviness, to God, and then take it to other people to be able to verbally process and release it in a more fleshly way, that we need to have that release, but allow God to carry that heaviness of that burden. And that was a huge breakthrough for me.
So for somebody who that doesn't make sense to them, what does that mean for me to hand this burden to God? Because I can't physically pick it up and give it to him, right?
Yeah.
And I can't see him be like, hey, God, here you go. Take this. What does that look like?
Yeah, it was actually slowing down and physically seeing, in my imaginary eye of giving these things to God. For me, I'm a very visual person, and I had to cry it out all the time. God, just take this from me. God, just take this from me. God, just take this from me. And what I was recognizing was, rather than me continuing to do that, I was complaining to my friends. I was barking about how difficult my situation was, how hard it was for me and what I was going through. And instead of taking it to God and having that, at least releasing it to him in my quiet time first. And for me as a visual person, I had to picture that, of setting this at the feet of the cross, of putting it inside of him on the cross, that he carried that for. He died for it. So why not continue to give it to him? Does it always help emotionally? No, it doesn't. And that's okay. But we have to take it to him first.
Yeah. If your life is really hard and he says, give me your life, he wants your life, right? He wants you to give it to him. So I love how you said that, because I mean, there really is, inside of our minds, we have hands. I like to look at it this way. If you're in your head, you do have hands. You do have control inside of your mind. It might seem like we have no control of what we think of, but we really do. And like surrendering when you're having, and this is easy to say in situations, but it's hard to do in situations sometimes. Physically, like if you keep having a repeating thought, give it to God. Just give it over. I'm not going to think this anymore, Lord. I just give it to you. And then when it comes up again, you hand it over instead of you ruminating on it. Picture yourself giving it to him. That's really good advice, man. Really practical, because that, to me, whenever I was early in my walk with God, I was like, what do you mean give it to him? Like, it doesn't even make any sense. Like, what do I do? But to physically picture it and do it changes everything. And but it has to be but it's repeated. It's like a continuous surrender, because that stuff, we know how our thoughts are, especially when something's difficult. It's nonstop. So you've got to nonstop surrender it sometimes.
Yeah, one of the prayers that I spoke out all the time was, I command my mind to submit to my soul, my soul to submit to my spirit, and my spirit to submit to Holy Spirit, in Jesus' name. And speaking that out would bring full alignment to my body in the spiritual realm. And a lot of times just speaking that out gave me that confidence to keep moving forward.
Incredible. That's incredible. I love that. Okay, so with the couple of minutes that we have left here, where are you now? What are you doing now, right? You see down below your name, Devin, it says guidetoinfluence.com. We want to use our influence for good. You came out of this long wilderness period of your life. You came out of the Job season. Now you're experiencing the double blessing, right? The other side of the story. What does that look like right now? What are you doing now?
Yeah, so I've built out a coaching academy to be able to help coaches be able to step into the fullness of releasing their story and their influence, and doing that especially on social media. I've also, from that, built out a whole agency on being able to use your influence to affect the world. There was a major prophet that said that there's going to be 1 billion soul harvest. And I believe that as believers, if we fully believe that, I think that it's going to be through a lot of it through social media. And so I want to be that avenue to be able to help people use their influence. You know, you can pay for ads, you can pay to get onto stages, do all these wonderful things. But Rob, just like you're using right now, there's 2.2 billion people just on Facebook, and you can reach those people for free. And I've tapped into figuring out how to be able to use the algorithms and now how to be able to do that on all platforms, and just love helping other people to be able to get their stories out, leave their legacy, because that's the keys to the kingdom, is the legacy that we leave behind.
Yeah. And that's also how we are freed from the things that that are like tearing the curse, whatever the curse is. That's how we turn it into the gift. That's how we take the mess. We make it the message that's going to impact others. I really am inspired by it. And this is really cool too, right? Because social media, so many people are just so tormented by it. We let it use us. We let it tear us apart, waste our lives, ruin relationships, make us so hateful, and we think that everything's falling apart. And I always look at life this way. And I know some people do have really, really hard lives, so this doesn't apply quite to them. But I think for myself, man, if I am just living my daily life, like living in my 5-foot world, everything is pretty darn good. Like, I mean, there's difficult things, but things overall are pretty darn good. But you get on social media and it's like the world's ending every day 1,000,000 times over, right? So how do you use social media and not let it use you? And this is something I also help people with, man, because it's such a powerful tool, but we use it as this destructive thing that's like a huge distraction, and also wasting our time, not helping us use our time more efficiently and effectively. So what's some advice you have for people to be able to do that?
Yeah, so I believe everything comes down to the kingdom principles of what God has shown us. And I don't believe that Jesus lived different lifestyles like many of us think that we need to do. Jesus lived his same life in ministry as he did in his business, as he did in his full lifestyle. Those three things were all one. So why do we try and separate our lives out into all these different categories? And excuse me, one of the big things that I train people is that in order to have full influence over everything that you have control over, is number one, you need to know your identity on social media. Who are you showing up as, and are you being authentic in that? So who is your identity? Number two is, what is your impact? What is the impact that you are leaving? Never tell a story or share something without having a point to it. And number three is, are you generating kingdom income with that? And that way, if we want to have ministries, you got to have income to be able to fund that ministry, or it won't last very long. That all equals influence.
What a concept, right? The broke Christian doesn't work.
Right.
This is really good stuff, dude. I love it. I love talking to you. Just your personal story, but the fact of what you've turned it into and how you convey your message is exactly, I feel the same exact way. So I feel very connected to like your mission and how you're doing what you're doing. If they want to find out more information about what you are doing, they can go to guidetoinfluence.com. Devin, I just want to honor you. Thank you for being a part of the Unstuck movement. Anything you want to leave the audience with before we sign off?
I just want to remind everybody that you were all born to be leaders. You're all created to be a legend, and every legend leaves a legacy. And your legacy starts right now.
Incredible, brother. Thank you for being a part of the Unstuck movement.